The assignment. The briefing chamber aboard the Kvalesh warship Dominion's Fong hummed with anticipation. Commander Zenthari stood before her elite commando unit, her 4 eyes gleaming with predatory confidence beneath the violet combat lights. Target designation, Dr. Kenna Oren Vasquez, she announced, her mandibles clicking with satisfaction. Human. Female. 42 standard cycles. Xenobotanist stationed on Research Outpost Meridian 7. Her second-in-command, Tactical Officer Renzik, tilted his crested head. A scientist? Commander, we are the Kvalesh Phantom Strike. We've toppled governments and eliminated warlords across 9 sectors. Why deploy us against a single unarmed academic? Zenthari's expression darkened. Because the Galactic Security Council demands it. 3 months ago, this human discovered something on Meridian 7. Something that could destabilize the entire Convergence Treaty. Intelligence suggests she's decoded the location of the precursor archives. A collective hiss rippled through the assembled commandos. The precursor archives, legendary repositories of ancient technology that predated every known civilization. Whoever controlled them would reshape the balance of power across the galaxy. Our mission is simple, Zenthari continued. Infiltrate the outpost. Secure the human. Extract all data from her research station. Standard reconnaissance indicates minimal security, just automated defense drones and basic environmental shields. The human is alone, cataloging plant specimens in a greenhouse complex. She doesn't even carry a weapon. Vrelnax, the squad's infiltration specialist, flexed his chameleonic dermal plates. When do we deploy? Immediately. Meridian 7 is a Level 3 research station on a garden world the humans call Verdant Hope. Breathable atmosphere, moderate gravity, rich biosphere. The planet's isolation makes it perfect for our purposes. No military presence, no witnesses, no complications. The commander pulled up a holographic display of their target. Dr. Vasquez appeared unremarkable by any standard, average height for a human, dark hair pulled back in a practical braid, wearing standard research coveralls. Her file listed degrees in xenobotany, biochemistry, and ecological systems. No combat training. No military service. No augmentations. She looks fragile, observed Crixtal, the team's heavy assault specialist, her dense exoskeleton gleaming. Like she'd shatter if I breathed on her too hard. Zenthari's mandibles curved into what might have been a smile. Precisely. Humans are Category 4 on the Galactic Threat Assessment. Below average strength, minimal natural defenses, susceptible to most standard incapacitation methods. This should be the simplest extraction of our careers. She distributed tactical assignments with practiced efficiency. Vrelnax would handle perimeter infiltration. Crixtal would neutralize any automated defenses. Renzik would manage communications blackout. The remaining 4 commandos, Swax Mora, Drelkoth, Vexenwar and Quinzara, would execute the actual capture. One critical detail, Zenthari added. We need her alive and conscious. The Council wants everything she knows about the archives, which means we can't simply stun her into compliance. She must be coherent enough to access her research systems. Understood, Renzik acknowledged. Gentle capture protocols. The team suited up in their adaptive combat armor, suits that could shift from stealth black to environmental camouflage, equipped with energy dampeners, neural disruptors and gravitational manipulation fields. Each commando carried enough firepower to level a small settlement, though for this mission, most weapons would remain holstered. As the drop ship descended toward Verdant Hope's lush surface, Zenthari reviewed the mission parameters one final time. The outpost consisted of 6 interconnected biodomes, with Dr. Vasquez's primary workspace located in Greenhouse 3. Thermal scans showed her moving among the plant beds, apparently conducting routine sample collection. Commander, the pilot announced, we're approaching the landing zone. No detection. No alerts. Their security grid hasn't even registered our presence. Excellent. Begin final approach. The commandos checked their equipment with professional precision. Vrelnax activated his cloaking field, becoming nearly invisible. Crixtal primed her shield disruptors. The others synchronized their neural interfaces for seamless tactical coordination. Remember, Zenthari instructed as the drop ship settled into a hidden clearing 2 kilometers from the outpost, this is a surgical operation. No collateral damage. No witnesses. We extract the human, secure her data, and disappear before anyone even knows we were here. Standard Phantom Strike protocols. The team filed out into Verdant Hope's warm afternoon air. The planet lived up to its name, verdant vegetation and shades of emerald and jade stretched in every direction, punctuated by flowering plants that released sweet fragrances into the breeze. Two suns hung in an azure sky, casting double shadows across the landscape. "Move out," Zenthari commanded. The Commandos advanced with lethal grace, their armor adapting to match the surrounding foliage. Within minutes they had the research outpost in visual range. The biodomes gleamed in the dual sunlight, peaceful and unaware. Inside Greenhouse 3, Dr. Kenna Vasquez hummed softly to herself as she examined a particularly interesting specimen of luminescent moss. She had no idea that 8 of the galaxy's most dangerous operatives were converging on her position. No idea that her quiet afternoon was about to become very complicated. And absolutely no idea that she was about to teach the Kvalesh Phantom Strike the most humiliating lesson of their military careers. First contact. Vrelnax reached the outer perimeter fence first, his cloaking field rendering him effectively invisible to both visual and most sensor systems. The fence itself was laughably simple, basic electrified wire with motion sensors spaced at 10-meter intervals. Child's play for someone of his training. He deployed a neural bypass node, splicing into the security grid with practiced ease. Within seconds he'd created a blind spot in the surveillance network. "Perimeter compromised," he whispered into the comm. "You have a clean entry vector, Commander." "Acknowledged." "Crixtal, disable the automated defenses." The heavy assault specialist moved into position, targeting the 3 Guardian-class defense drones stationed around the greenhouse complex. Her weapon hummed as it charged, then released 3 precise electromagnetic pulses. The drones dropped from their hovering positions like stones, their systems completely fried. "Defenses neutralized," Crixtal reported. "No alarms triggered." Zenthari allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. "Renzik, communications blackout." "Already done, Commander. I've established a dampening field around the entire outpost. No signals in or out. We're ghosts." "Perfect." The commander signaled her capture team forward. Swexmora, Drelkoth, Vexenwar and Quinzara moved as one fluid unit, entering the airlock that led to Greenhouse 3. The lock cycled through with barely a whisper of sound. Inside, the environment was warm and humid, filled with the rich scent of alien vegetation. Rows of specimen tables stretched in organized lines, each holding plants from dozens of worlds. Automated irrigation systems misted the air, creating small rainbows in the filtered sunlight. And there, 30 meters ahead, was their target. Dr. Kenna Vasquez stood with her back to them, examining something on a handheld scanner. She was exactly as her file described, unremarkable, unarmed, completely absorbed in her work. She hadn't even noticed the door opening. "Target acquired," Swexmora whispered. "Moving to secure." The 4 commandos spread into a standard capture formation, 2 flanking positions, 1 rear guard, 1 direct approach. They'd executed this maneuver hundreds of times. It was textbook perfect. Swexmora reached for the neural disruptor at her belt, intending to deliver a mild stunning pulse that would disorient the human just enough for easy restraint. She was 3 meters away when Dr. Vasquez spoke without turning around. "You know, most people knock before entering someone's workspace." The commandos froze. Swexmora's hand hesitated on her weapon. "Dr. Vasquez, we require your cooperation." "Let me guess," the human interrupted, still not turning. "You're here for the precursor data. Someone on the Galactic Council got nervous about what I found and decided to send professionals instead of filing proper research protocols." She finally turned to face them, and Swexmora was struck by the complete lack of fear in the woman's eyes. "Kvalesh, judging by the armor configuration. Phantom Strike unit, probably. Which means you're very good at what you do." Zenthari's voice crackled in their earpieces. "How does she?" "I'm a scientist," Dr. Vasquez continued, setting down her scanner with deliberate care. "I observe. I analyze. I prepare for contingencies. When you discover something as significant as I have, you expect someone will eventually come looking for it. I just didn't expect them quite so soon." Drelkoth moved to flank her from the left, but the human tracked his movement with her eyes. "I wouldn't do that if I were you. You're in no position to give orders," Swexmora stated, activating her neural disruptor. "Come quietly and you won't be harmed." Dr. Vasquez smiled, a calm, almost amused expression that seemed wildly inappropriate given the circumstances. "You misunderstand. I'm not threatening you. I'm trying to save you from embarrassing yourselves." She took a step backward toward a particular plant bed covered in what appeared to be innocent blue flowers. See, the thing about xenobotany is that you learn which plants are friendly and which ones very much aren't. These, for instance, she gestured at the blue flowers, are called shrieking thorn vines. Beautiful, aren't they? Enough talking, Vexenwire growled, moving forward. Secure her. They're also extremely territorial, Dr. Vasquez continued, taking another step back. And they have a very interesting defense mechanism triggered by rapid movement and elevated stress hormones. Like, say, the hormones produced by aggressive predators. Vexenwire lunged for her. The blue flowers exploded into motion. Vines erupted from the soil with shocking speed, whipping through the air with razor-sharp thorns gleaming. They lashed at Vexenwire with unerring accuracy, wrapping around his legs and arms. He roared in surprise, stumbling backward as the thorns scraped against his armor. The vines weren't strong enough to penetrate Kvalesh combat plating, but they were certainly strong enough to immobilize. Warning shots, Dr. Vasquez said calmly, backing toward another plant bed. They're just saying hello. Quinzara opened fire with her particle stunner, hoping to blast the vines away from her teammate. The energy beam struck true, severing several tendrils, which immediately began secreting a thick, sticky sap that smelled like rotting fruit. Oh, you probably shouldn't have done that, the doctor observed. The sap is how they reproduce. Very adhesive. Very hard to remove. Also somewhat acidic, though not enough to hurt you. Just enough to make your armor electronics very unhappy. Sure enough, Quinzara's heads-up display began flickering as the sap dripped onto her suit sensor array. She cursed in 4 languages. Drelkoth attempted to circle wide, avoiding the thorn vines, but Dr. Vasquez casually bumped a different plant stand with her hip. Spore poppers, she announced cheerfully. From the methane swamps of Tiberius 9. Mushroom-like growths on the disturbed plants began swelling rapidly, then burst with soft popping sounds, releasing clouds of iridescent spores into the air. Drelkoth inhaled a lungful before his armor's filters could adjust. The effect was immediate. His vision began to sparkle and swirl. His depth perception became unreliable. His equilibrium shifted unpredictably. The spores weren't toxic, but they were intensely hallucinogenic. Everything is triangles, he mumbled, swaying on his feet. Why are there so many triangles? The spores will wear off in about 20 minutes, Dr. Vasquez assured him. Until then, I recommend sitting down before you hurt yourself. Drelkoth sat down heavily, staring at his hands with fascination. Swexmora backed away, reassessing the situation. Commander, the target is. Using the greenhouse as a weapon, Zenthari finished grimly, watching through the Commandos' helmet cameras. Adapt your approach. She's just one human. You're trained Phantom Strike operatives. Overcome and capture. Swexmora nodded, signaling to Quinzara. They would coordinate a simultaneous approach from opposite directions, giving the human too many threats to manage at once. They moved. Dr. Vasquez sighed and pulled a small spray bottle from her pocket, misting herself liberally with some kind of clear liquid. Then she walked directly toward the most densely planted section of the greenhouse. I really wish you'd just sit down and talk about this reasonably, she called over her shoulder. But if you insist on doing this the hard way. She disappeared into a thicket of tall, feathery plants that resembled oversized ferns. Swexmora and Quinzara plunged in after her, and immediately understood their mistake. The ferns weren't ferns at all. The greenhouse gauntlet. The feathery fronds that looked so soft and harmless were actually covered in thousands of microscopic hooks, too small to see, but perfectly designed to catch and cling to anything that brushed against them. Swexmora felt her armor snagging with every movement, the hooks creating enough friction to slow her down significantly. It's like moving through glue, Quinzara grunted, forcing her way forward. Where did she go? Dr. Vasquez's voice drifted from somewhere ahead, completely calm. These are Velcro ferns from Paradiso Prime. I sprayed myself with a silicon-based release agent, so they don't affect me. You, unfortunately, don't have that advantage. Swexmora tried to activate her suit's enhanced strength protocols, but the microhooks had found their way into several servo joints, gumming up the mechanisms. She pulled free of one frond only to become entangled in 3 more. Outside the greenhouse, Zenthari monitored the unfolding disaster with growing frustration. Vrelnax, Krixtal, enter Greenhouse 3 immediately. Support the capture team. On our way, Commander, Vrelnax confirmed, deactivating his cloaking field to move faster. Inside, Dr. Vasquez had emerged from the Velcro ferns and was now standing beside what appeared to be a perfectly ordinary cactus garden. She checked her watch with the air of someone timing bread in an oven. Vexenwar had finally freed himself from the shrieking thorn vines, leaving behind several chunks of his armor's outer plating stuck in the vine's grasp. He charged at the human with a roar of frustration, determined not to be humiliated twice. "Wait!" Mora shouted from within the fern thicket. "It's another trap." But Vexenwar was beyond listening. He closed the distance in 4 powerful strides, reaching for Dr. Vasquez with clawed hands. She stepped aside at the last possible second, as casually as someone avoiding a puddle on a sidewalk. Vexenwar's momentum carried him directly into the cactus garden. The cacti responded to the impact by firing their spines. These weren't normal cactus spines, they were pressurized projectiles, launched with enough force to embed themselves in solid wood. They struck Vexenwar's armor like a hailstorm, each impact triggering his suit's threat detection systems. Warning klaxons blared. His heads-up display turned red with damage indicators. The spines themselves didn't penetrate his armor, but the sheer number of impacts, over 200 in 3 seconds, overloaded his suit's compensators. He stumbled backward, arms windmilling, and crashed into a table of specimen jars. Glass shattered. Preservative fluid splashed across the floor. Something that smelled like burnt rubber mixed with vanilla began smoking. "Those jars contained suspended samples from Bog World Zeta 4, Dr. Vasquez mentioned, backing away from the spreading puddle. "The preservation fluid is harmless in isolation, but when it mixes with oxygen, it creates a very effective adhesive foam. You should move away from it." Vexenwar tried to stand, but his hands were already stuck to the floor. The fluid was expanding rapidly, turning into a foamy substance that locked his armor in place like quick-setting concrete. "I warned you," the doctor said with a shrug. Vrelnax and Krixtal burst through the airlock at that moment, taking in the scene with professional assessment. One commando hallucinogenic and sitting peacefully on the floor. 2 stuck in fern thickets. 1 immobilized by expanding foam. And 1 small human standing in the middle of it all, looking completely unruffled. "Coordinated assault," Krixtal ordered. "No hesitation. Maximum aggression." They split up, approaching from opposite sides. Dr. Vasquez rotated to keep them both in view, her hands clasped behind her back like a teacher addressing particularly slow students. "You know," she said conversationally, "there's a human saying, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. How many of your teammates need to be incapacitated before you realize this isn't working? You cannot hold out forever," Vrelnax hissed, his chameleonic plates rippling with agitation. "You have limited space. Limited resources. We are trained for this." "True," Dr. Vasquez acknowledged. "But I have one significant advantage you don't." "And what is that?" Krixtal demanded. The doctor's smile widened. "I actually know what every plant in this greenhouse does." She reached up and pulled a cord hanging from the ceiling. A series of grow lamps positioned throughout the greenhouse suddenly blazed to life, but these weren't ordinary lights. They emitted a specific wavelength in the ultraviolet spectrum. Several plants throughout the greenhouse immediately reacted. The Velcro ferns began releasing their grip, retracting their fronds. The thorn vines withdrew back into their soil. And a new set of plants, ones that had been dormant and unremarkable, started to glow with bioluminescent patterns. "Twilight dancers," Dr. Vasquez explained, as delicate tendrils of light began weaving through the air like aurora borealis. "They use UV light to trigger a mating display. Completely harmless to humans, our eyes actually find it quite beautiful. But to species with broader visual spectrums like the Kvalesh." Vrelnax and Krixtal were already reeling. The light patterns, visible to their enhanced vision in far greater intensity and complexity than humans could perceive, created a strobing effect that overwhelmed their neural processing. It was like staring directly into a kaleidoscope made of lightning. Krixtal's heavy exoskeleton locked up, her biological systems automatically shutting down non-essential functions to protect her brain from sensory overload. She toppled like a felled tree. Vrelnax managed to close his eyes, but the light penetrated his chameleonic plates, which were specifically designed to register and mimic all wavelengths of visible light. He staggered, disoriented, directly into a plant bed he hadn't noticed. "Oh no," Dr. Vasquez said with genuine sympathy. "Not the screamer bulbs." The bulbous plants Vrelnax had stumbled into released their defense mechanism, a piercing, oscillating shriek at frequencies specifically designed to ward off herbivores. The sound was deafening even to human ears. To Vrelnax's more sensitive hearing, it was agonizing. He clapped his hands over his ear slits and ran blindly for what he hoped was the exit, crashing through more plant beds on the way. The UV lights, the screaming plants, the disorientation. It was all too much. He made it out of the greenhouse but collapsed just outside the airlock, his sensory systems completely overloaded. Inside, the UV lights slowly dimmed. The twilight dancers settled back into dormancy. The screamer bulbs quieted. Dr. Vasquez surveyed the greenhouse with a critical eye. 6 elite commandos incapacitated in under 15 minutes. Drelkoth was still sitting peacefully, watching sparkles in the air. Vexenwire remained stuck to the floor, foam hardening around him. Oxmora and Quinzara were still working their way out of the Velcro ferns. Krixtal was unconscious. And Vrelnax had fled. "This is why I prefer plants to people," she said to no one in particular. "Plants are predictable." Outside the greenhouse, Commander Zenthari stared at her monitor in disbelief. 6 of her best operatives. Defeated by a middle-aged botanist and her collection of houseplants. "Renzik," she said quietly, her voice deadly calm. "Prepare the containment protocols." "Commander? We're going in personally. And we're bringing the heavy equipment." Escalation. Commander Zenthari stood before the greenhouse complex, her mandibles clicking in a rhythm that Renzik had learned to recognize as barely suppressed rage. Behind them, the dropship's cargo bay had been opened, revealing an array of military hardware that seemed absurdly excessive for capturing one unarmed scientist. "Are we certain this is necessary?" Renzik asked, eyeing the portable shield generators and neural blanket systems. "The council wanted this handled quietly." Quiet went out the airlock the moment my commandos started getting defeated by garden vegetables, Zenthari snapped. "We're ending this. Now, deploy the containment field." 2 technical specialists wheeled out a massive generator, positioning it at the greenhouse entrance. When activated, it would create a neural dampening field that would render any organic being inside unconscious within 30 seconds. No pain. No permanent damage. Just absolute, immediate shutdown of all higher brain functions. "Field generator in position," one technician reported. "Charging to full power. Estimated time to deployment, 2 minutes." Zenthari accessed the comms to address her team, what remained functional of it, anyway. "All personnel, evacuate Greenhouse 3 immediately. We're deploying knockout protocols. Move now." Inside the greenhouse, Oxmora had finally extracted herself from the Velcro ferns, though her armor looked like it had been through a shredding machine. She grabbed Quinzara's hand and pulled her free as well. Together they helped Drelkoth to his feet. He was still giggling at invisible things but could walk with assistance. "What about Vexenwire?" Quinzara asked, looking at their teammates still encased in hardened foam. "Leave him," Oxmora ordered. "We'll extract him after the field drops the human." Dr. Vasquez watched them stumble toward the airlock with an expression of mild concern. "You know," she called after them, "I really am sorry about this. If you'd just asked nicely for the data, we could have avoided all this unpleasantness." "Save it for the interrogation," Oxmora muttered, dragging Drelkoth through the airlock. The greenhouse fell quiet. Dr. Vasquez found herself alone except for Vexenwire, who was thoroughly stuck and glaring at her with all the venom his position allowed. "I suppose they're bringing in something more serious," she said, not really expecting an answer. "Neural field generator," Vexenwire growled. "You'll be unconscious in minutes. Game over, human." Dr. Vasquez walked to her research station and pulled up a series of monitors. "Neural field generator, you say? That's interesting." Outside, the generator reached full charge. Zenthari checked the readings personally, unwilling to trust this to anyone else. Everything was optimal. The field would penetrate the greenhouse walls, saturate every cubic meter of internal space, and shut down the human's nervous system like flipping a switch. "Activate," she commanded. The generator hummed to life, emitting a pulse that rippled through the air like heat shimmer. The effect was immediate and absolute. Birds fell from nearby trees unconscious. Insects dropped mid-flight. Even the technicians standing behind the generator's protective barrier felt a wave of drowsiness wash over them. Inside the greenhouse, nothing happened. Dr. Vasquez continued working at her research station, completely unaffected. She glanced at a readout on one monitor and nodded to herself. "Thought so." Vexenwire stared at her in disbelief. "That's impossible. The neural field should have knocked me unconscious?" "Yes, normally it would." She turned to face him with a patient smile. "But you see, I've been working on this planet for 3 years. And one of the very first things I discovered was a plant that produces a natural compound that blocks neural dampening frequencies. It's how the local fauna protects themselves from predators that use psionic attacks. She held up a small patch attached to her neck, barely visible beneath her collar. I've been wearing a sustained-release dermal patch for the last hour. The compound creates a sort of interference pattern in my nervous system. Completely harmless to me, but it makes neural fields ineffective. Outside, Zenthari was staring at the generator's readings in confusion. Power output normal. Field integrity confirmed. Coverage complete. Why is the target still conscious? Renzik ran a diagnostic. Commander, the field is working perfectly. But the human is showing no neural activity signature. That's impossible. She's clearly still moving. I know, Commander. It's as if she's invisible to the neural detector. Zenthari's eyes narrowed. Then we do this the old-fashioned way. She drew her personal sidearm, a gravitational compression pistol that could fire restraining fields. I'm going in. Renzik, you're with me. The rest of you establish a perimeter. If she tries to run, stun her. Commander, perhaps we should. Now, tactical officer. The two Kvalesh entered the greenhouse with weapons raised and shields active. They'd learned from their team's mistakes. No charging in blindly. No getting close to the plants. They would maintain distance, use ranged weapons, and end this professionally. They found Dr. Vasquez standing in the center aisle, arms crossed, looking more tired than frightened. Commander Zenthari, I presume, she said. The four-eyed one with the excessive number of commendations and the reputation for never failing a mission? You've done your research, Zenthari replied, keeping her weapon trained on the human. I'm almost impressed. But this ends now. Surrender the precursor data, and you'll be treated humanely during interrogation. Or what? You'll shoot me? The council wants me alive and coherent, remember? You said so yourself in your briefing. Zenthari's mandibles clicked in frustration. The human had somehow been listening to their private communications. Oh. Dr. Vasquez seemed to read her expression. You established a communications blackout, yes. Very thorough. But you didn't account for passive listening devices. I have sensors throughout this facility that pick up most frequencies. I've been hearing everything you've said since you landed. Clever, Renzik admitted. But ultimately futile. We don't need to harm you. The gravitational restraint fields will simply hold you in place while we extract the data ourselves. You could try that, Dr. Vasquez agreed. But I should mention that my research station is equipped with a dead man switch. If my biometric signature stops registering active consciousness for more than 30 seconds, the entire database is wiped and the backup servers are automatically purged. You'll get nothing. It was a bluff. Probably. But Zenthari couldn't take the risk. The council had been explicit. They wanted the precursor data intact. Without it, this entire mission was worthless. Then we're at an impasse, the commander said slowly. Not quite. Dr. Vasquez walked toward them. Slowly, hands visible, no sudden movements. See, I'm actually willing to share the data. I'm a scientist, not a politician. Information should be freely available to benefit everyone. But the Galactic Council wants to hoard it, weaponize it, use it to maintain their power structure. That's why they sent you instead of filing a proper research request through academic channels. She stopped 3 meters away. Here's my counteroffer. I'll give you the data, all of it, if you guarantee it goes to the Galactic Science Foundation instead of the Security Council. They'll publish it openly, make it available to all member species. Everyone benefits. Knowledge shared is knowledge multiplied. Zenthari almost laughed. I don't have the authority to make that agreement. Then call someone who does. You have FTL comms on your ship. Contact the Foundation directly. I'll wait. This is ridiculous, Renzik muttered. We're negotiating with our target? We're problem-solving, Dr. Vasquez corrected. There's a difference. Look, I understand you're just following orders. You're soldiers, not diplomats. But surely even you can see that classifying the precursor data serves no one except those who fear change. Zenthari considered the situation. 7 of her best operatives incapacitated or humiliated. A target who had anticipated every tactical approach. A mission that had devolved from a simple extraction to a hostage negotiation where somehow the hostage was dictating terms. And the human was right, she didn't have the authority to redirect the data. That decision was above her pay grade by several levels. I need to consult with my superiors, she finally said. But understand this, Doctor, if you're lying about the dead man's switch, if this is some elaborate stalling tactic, I will make you regret it. Fair enough, Dr. Vasquez replied. Take all the time you need. I'll be right here tending to my plants. She turned her back on two armed Kvalesh commandos and walked calmly back to her research station, as if they posed no threat whatsoever. It was the most insulting thing Zenthari had experienced in her entire military career. The call home. The communications chamber aboard the Dominion's Fong was designed for secure, encrypted FTL transmissions across vast distances. Zenthari had used it dozens of times to report mission success, request extraction, or coordinate with allied forces. This was the first time she'd used it to admit failure. Explain this to me again, High Commander Vuex Mora demanded, her holographic projection flickering slightly from the light years of distance. Your entire Phantom Strike unit was defeated by a single botanist using houseplants? In summary, yes, High Commander, Zenthari replied, managing to keep her voice steady despite the humiliation. The target, Dr. Vasquez, has proven significantly more resourceful than intelligence suggested. Resourceful? Vuex Mora's laugh was bitter. She turned your commandos into a comedy act. I have the helmet cam footage right here. One of your people is stuck to the floor. Another was hallucinating about geometric shapes. This is unacceptable. Renzik stepped forward. High Commander, with respect, the target has demonstrated tactical acumen that suggests prior military training or at minimum extensive survival preparation. Her personnel file may be incomplete. The hologram turned to regard him coldly. Are you suggesting our intelligence network failed? I'm suggesting the target is not what she appears to be. Before Vuex Mora could respond, another voice cut into the channel, older, carrying more authority. Let me speak with her. The hologram shifted, replaced by a figure Zenthari recognized with shock. Counselor Threndax of the Galactic Security Council himself, one of the 5 beings who governed interstellar policy across 47 member species. Counselor, Zenthari said quickly, snapping to attention. I wasn't aware you were monitoring this operation personally. A mission involving Precursor Archives data warrants personal attention, Threndax replied. His species, the Minox, resembled nothing so much as crystalline mantids, and his multifaceted eyes reflected light in complex patterns. Tell me about the human's offer. Zenthari relayed Dr. Vasquez's proposal. Data released to the Galactic Science Foundation instead of remaining classified by the Security Council. Threndax was silent for a long moment. Then, put me in contact with her. Direct channel. Now. Counselor, that's highly irregular. Commander, you have failed to secure the target through conventional means. We're trying unconventional approaches. Establish the link. Renzik worked the communications array, routing a signal through the greenhouse's research network. Within moments, Dr. Vasquez's face appeared on a secondary screen, split with Threndax's hologram. Dr. Vasquez, the counselor began. I am. Counselor Threndax, yes, I recognized your biosignature, she interrupted. The Minox have a distinctive crystalline refraction pattern in standard video transmission. I'm familiar with your work on the Convergence Treaty revisions. Impressive negotiations. Threndax's mandibles twitched, surprise perhaps or amusement. You're well informed for a botanist. I read widely. So, Counselor, are you here to threaten me personally, or are we finally going to have a reasonable conversation about the precursor data? I'm here to understand why you're obstructing a lawful Security Council operation. Dr. Vasquez leaned back in her chair, perfectly relaxed despite speaking to one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Because there's nothing lawful about classifying knowledge that could benefit every species in the Convergence. The Precursor Archives contain medical technologies, agricultural advances, energy systems, information that could save billions of lives. And you want to lock it away because you're afraid of what might happen if everyone has access to it. I'm afraid of what will happen when certain species weaponize it, Threndax corrected. Not everyone shares your idealistic views on information sharing, Doctor. Some civilizations would use precursor technology to wage war. Some civilizations use kitchen knives to commit murder, but we don't ban cutlery, she countered. You can't prevent abuse by hoarding knowledge. You can only ensure that good people have access to the tools they need to counter the bad ones. A naive position. A human position. We've had this debate on Earth for centuries, whether to restrict dangerous knowledge or trust people with the truth. And you know what we've learned? Secrecy breeds conspiracy, paranoia, and eventual conflict. Openness breeds collaboration. Zenthari watched the exchange with fascination. The human was debating interstellar policy with a galactic counselor as if they were colleagues discussing a research paper over lunch. Threndax leaned forward in his hologram. Let me be frank, Doctor. The Council will have that data one way or another. If you won't cooperate, we have options. Surgical strikes. Orbital bombardment. We could reduce your entire facility to ash and sift through the ruins for your servers. You could, Dr. Vasquez agreed. But you won't. Because if I'm dead, you'll never decrypt the files. I've used a biometric encryption system that requires my living neural patterns to unlock. Kill me and the data is permanently inaccessible. Zenthari watched Threndax's hologram carefully. The counselor's crystalline features made him difficult to read, but she detected the slightest shift in his posture. The human's bluff, if it was a bluff, was working. Furthermore, Dr. Vasquez continued, I've already transmitted encrypted portions of my findings to 3 separate academic institutions as insurance. If I don't check in every 72 hours, those packages automatically open and distribute to the entire galactic science network. So if you do decide to destroy this facility, you'll just ensure the data goes public anyway. You'll have killed me and still failed to contain the information. Silence stretched across the light years. Renzik glanced at Zenthari with something like respect in his eyes. The human had backed the Galactic Security Council into a corner using nothing but preparation and audacity. Finally, Threndax spoke. You're bluffing. About the neural encryption at minimum. Am I? Dr. Vasquez smiled. Feel free to test that hypothesis. I'm sure the Council has plenty of other xenobotanists who can pick up where my research left off. Should only take them, 15 or 20 years to reach my current level of understanding. The precursor archives will still be there waiting. Another long pause. Then Threndax surprised everyone. What do you really want, Doctor? The truth this time. Dr. Vasquez's expression softened. I want the knowledge to matter. I've spent 3 years on this planet, cataloging thousands of species, understanding ecosystems that predate most galactic civilizations. And I found something extraordinary, evidence that the precursors didn't just build technologies. They built sustainable, integrated systems that worked in harmony with natural biological processes. That's the real treasure in the archives. Not weapons. Not power. Understanding. And you believe the Science Foundation will preserve that vision? I believe they're more likely to than a council of politicians worried about maintaining the status quo. Threndax was quiet for so long that Zenthari wondered if the transmission had failed. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, less authoritative, more contemplative. Doctor, I'm going to tell you something not many people know. I was a scientist myself before politics. I studied quantum resonance patterns in dark matter. I published 47 papers before I ever entered public service. And I still remember what it felt like to discover something no one else had ever seen before. He paused. The Council isn't evil despite what you may think. We're trying to manage thousands of species, each with their own agendas, fears, and ambitions. Sometimes that means making choices that seem restrictive but prevent catastrophic conflicts. I understand that, Dr. Vasquez said quietly. But I can't accept it. Not when I'm holding information that could change everything. Then let me propose a compromise, Threndax offered. You give us complete access to your findings. In exchange, we establish a joint oversight committee, Science Foundation representatives, council members, and independent ethicists. They review the data together and decide what gets released, when, and to whom. Graduated disclosure instead of either total secrecy or immediate publication. Dr. Vasquez considered this. Who chooses the committee members? The Science Foundation selects their representatives. The Council selects ours. Together, they select the independent ethicists from a pool of qualified candidates. And I have a permanent seat on the committee as the primary researcher? Agreed. With full veto power over any decision to weaponize the technology? Threndax hesitated. That's difficult. Then we have no deal, Dr. Vasquez said simply. I won't hand over information that could be used to hurt people, no matter how many layers of bureaucracy you wrap around it. The counselor's crystalline features seemed to ripple. You would reject a reasonable compromise over an impossible demand? I would reject any compromise that doesn't include safeguards against militarization. That's not impossible, it's essential. Zenthari found herself, against all professional judgment, silently rooting for the human. The doctor had principles and refused to bend them, even when facing overwhelming power. There was something admirable in that stubbornness. Very well, Threndax said at last. You'll have veto power over weaponization proposals. But understand, If you abuse that power, if you block legitimate defensive applications or obstruct reasonable safety measures, the Council will move to remove you from the committee. Fair enough, Dr. Vasquez replied. I'm not naive enough to think any civilization should be defenseless. I just want to make sure we're building shields, not swords. Then we have an agreement? Dr. Vasquez stood, extending her hand toward the camera in the traditional human gesture of accord. We have an agreement, Counselor. I'll begin transferring the preliminary data immediately. Full access within 48 hours. Threndax's hologram flickered with what might have been a smile. Doctor, you've been a remarkable adversary. I look forward to working with you on the committee. Likewise, Counselor. The transmission ended. Zenthari and Renzik stood in the communications chamber, processing what had just occurred. Did we just successfully complete the mission? Renzik asked uncertainly. I honestly don't know, Zenthari admitted. We didn't capture the target. We didn't secure the data by force. But we're getting the data anyway, which was the ultimate objective. Through negotiation. With our target. Who defeated 7 commandos using plants. Yes. They looked at each other for a long moment, then Renzik started laughing, a rare sound from the normally stoic tactical officer. What's funny? Zenthari demanded. We're the Phantom Strike. Elite warriors feared across 9 sectors. And we just got diplomatically outmaneuvered by a middle-aged woman with a greenhouse. Despite herself, Zenthari felt her mandibles curve into a smile. When you put it that way, it's going to make a terrible mission report. The worst I've ever written. But we're getting the data. We're getting the data, Zenthari confirmed. Outside, the twin suns of verdant hope began setting, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. In Greenhouse 3, Dr. Kenna Vasquez returned to her plants, humming softly as she worked. She'd faced down an elite military strike team and negotiated with the Galactic Security Council. And all she'd really wanted was to get back to her research in peace. Aftermath and understanding. 3 hours after the agreement was reached, Greenhouse 3 had become an unlikely gathering place. Dr. Vasquez had helped extract Vexenwar from his foam prison using a specialized solvent, and Drelkoth had finally stopped seeing triangles everywhere. The commandos sat in various states of disarray around specimen tables, while their target served them what she called earth tea, a hot beverage made from dried leaves that supposedly had calming properties. Crixtal eyed the steaming cup suspiciously. You're sure this isn't another one of your weaponized plants? It's chamomile from Earth, Dr. Vasquez assured her. Completely harmless. We drink it to relax. Though if you'd prefer, I have some nebula mint from Centauri Station that's quite refreshing. I'll stick with the human version, Crixtal decided, taking a cautious sip. Her eyes widened. This is actually pleasant. I told you. Dr. Vasquez settled into her desk chair, cradling her own cup. Not everything in my greenhouse is designed to incapacitate people. Most of it is just here because it's beautiful or interesting. Vrelnax, his chameleonic plate still showing stress patterns, examined one of the twilight dancers with newfound respect. How long have you been planning to use your plants defensively? Since about 2 months into my posting here, she admitted. When I discovered the precursor connection, I knew someone would eventually come for the data. I didn't know who or when, but I knew it would happen. So I started preparing contingencies. By turning your workplace into a minefield, Exmora said, though there was grudging admiration in her voice. By understanding my resources and using them creatively, Dr. Vasquez corrected. Every plant in this greenhouse has properties I've studied extensively. I know what they do, how they react, what triggers their defenses. It's not so different from how you train with your weapons. You know every capability, every limitation. You prepare for scenarios. I just did the same thing with botany instead of ballistics. Zenthari entered the greenhouse at that moment, having finished her detailed report to High Command. She surveyed the scene, her elite commandos drinking tea with their target, and decided the universe had officially stopped making sense. Dr. Vasquez, she said formally, the Council has transmitted the preliminary agreement documents. They're requesting you review and provide your biological signature by end of standard cycle. I'll look them over after we finish here, Dr. Vasquez replied, gesturing to an empty seat. Would you like some tea, Commander? You look like you could use it. Zenthari almost refused on principle, then decided she was too tired to maintain military protocol. She sat. What kind do you have? How do you feel about something with a bit of bite to it? I have spice bark tea from Thermia. It's got a kick, but it's good for stress. That sounds appropriate. As Dr. Vasquez prepared another cup, Renzik pulled up a holographic display showing the preliminary precursor data that had already been transmitted. I have to ask, Doctor, was the neural encryption bluff real? Do you actually have a system that requires your living brain patterns to unlock the files? She handed Zenthari her tea with a smile. What do you think, tactical officer? I think you're smart enough to have implemented something like that, and strategic enough to bluff about it if you hadn't. Then you'll never know for certain, will you? Keeps things interesting. Quinzara, whose armor was still partially covered in dried thornvine sap, laughed despite herself. You know, Doctor, in another life you'd have made a decent special operations officer. I considered military service when I was younger, Dr. Vasquez admitted. But I realized I'm much better at creating life than ending it. No offense to present company. None taken, Zenthari replied, tasting the spicebark tea and finding it surprisingly good. Though I have to say, you ended our operational effectiveness quite thoroughly without firing a single shot. That was self-defense, not aggression. There's a difference. Vexenware, who had been silent since his extraction from the foam, finally spoke up. Why help us now? After everything that happened, you're serving us tea and treating our injuries. We came here to capture you. Dr. Vasquez set down her cup, her expression thoughtful. Because you were following orders. You weren't here because you personally wanted to hurt me, you were here because someone in authority told you to be here. And now that we've reached an agreement, there's no reason for us to be enemies. In fact, we might end up working together on the oversight committee. You'd want us on the committee? Swagsmore asked, surprised. Why not? You're intelligent, trained to think strategically, and you've now personally experienced why underestimating humans is a bad idea. That's valuable perspective. Zenthari felt something unfamiliar, shame, perhaps, or regret. Doctor, I need to apologize. We came here with significant prejudice. Our intelligence briefing described humans as Category 4 on the threat assessment scale, weak, poorly adapted, minimal natural defenses. We underestimated you based on those classifications. Those classifications aren't entirely wrong, Dr. Vasquez pointed out. Compared to most species, humans are physically weaker. We don't have natural armor, claws, venom, or enhanced senses. On a purely biological level, we're not particularly impressive. Then how? Crixtal gestured around the greenhouse. How did you do all this? Because humans don't rely solely on our biology. We're tool users. Problem solvers. We adapt our environment instead of waiting for evolution to adapt us. You came in expecting a physical confrontation, but I fought you with knowledge, preparation, and creativity. Those are humanity's real strengths. Renzik nodded slowly. We trained to fight warriors. You fought like a scientist. Exactly. And there's a lesson there, I think. Dr. Vasquez stood, walking to one of the specimen tables. She picked up a small, delicate flower with translucent petals. This is called a frost bloom. It grows on ice planets where temperatures drop to -200 degrees. By all logic, a flower shouldn't survive in those conditions. But the frost bloom adapted. It doesn't fight the cold, it uses it. The freezing temperatures trigger a chemical reaction that generates just enough heat to keep its core alive. It thrives in an environment that would kill almost any other plant. She held it up to the light. Humans are like that. We're not the strongest or the fastest or the toughest. But we're survivors. We figure out how to thrive in impossible situations. Sometimes through technology. Sometimes through cooperation. Sometimes through sheer stubbornness. And sometimes through weaponized gardening, Vrelnax added dryly. Dr. Vasquez grinned. Especially through weaponized gardening. The group fell into a comfortable silence, sipping their tea and processing the day's events. Outside, Verdant Hope's 2 moons were rising, casting silver-blue light across the landscape. Doctor, Zenthari said eventually, what did you actually find in the precursor archives? What made the council so nervous? Dr. Vasquez was quiet for a moment, considering how much to reveal. Then she pulled up a holographic display of her own, a complex biological schematic that rotated slowly in the air. This, she said, is a precursor terraforming seed. It's a biological machine, part plant, part technology, designed to transform hostile worlds into habitable ones. One seed can generate an entire ecosystem from scratch. Atmosphere, soil, water cycle, biodiversity, everything needed for life. The Commandos stared at the schematic in awe. That's incredible, Zenthari breathed. With that technology you could turn any barren planet into a garden. Exactly. And that's what terrified the council. Because if every species suddenly had access to unlimited habitable worlds, the entire power structure of the galaxy would shift. There'd be no more resource scarcity. No more territorial conflicts. No more need for the strict population controls and settlement restrictions that currently keep various species from expanding too rapidly. It would destabilize everything, Renzik said. Or it would free everything, Dr. Vasquez countered. Depends on your perspective. The Council sees chaos. I see possibility. ZYX-Thra understood now why this mission had been deemed so critical. The implications of such technology were staggering. And you're willing to share this? She asked. With proper oversight and ethical guidelines, yes. Because I think the galaxy is ready for it. We've had enough wars over territory and resources. Maybe it's time to have abundance instead of scarcity. Crixtau raised her cup in a gesture that roughly translated to a toast. To abundance then. And to the stubborn human who defeated an entire commando unit to protect it. The others raised their cups as well. Dr. Vasquez laughed and joined them. To stubborn humans, she agreed. May they always be underestimated. As they drank, ZYX-Thra reflected on the day's events. She'd led her team into what should have been the simplest extraction of their careers. They'd been humiliated, defeated, and forced to negotiate with their target. And somehow, despite everything, it felt like they'd all won. New beginnings. 6 months later, the Galactic Science Foundation headquarters on Unity Station buzzed with activity. The Precursor Oversight Committee was holding its first public session, and representatives from 47 member species had gathered to witness what many were calling the most significant scientific disclosure in galactic history. Dr. Kenna Vasquez stood at the central podium, looking remarkably calm for someone about to address several thousand beings. She'd traded her research coveralls for more formal attire, though she'd insisted on adding a small frost bloom to her lapel, a reminder of where she'd come from. Beside her on the committee dais sat Counselor Threndax, 3 Science Foundation directors, 2 independent ethicists, and, to the surprise of many in attendance, Commander ZYX-Thra. The Kvalesh officer had been appointed as the Security Council's military liaison to the committee, a position that required her to ensure that disclosed technologies didn't pose immediate threats to galactic stability. It was an unlikely role for someone who'd originally been sent to capture the very person she now worked alongside. Colleagues and esteemed guests, Dr. Vasquez began, her voice amplified across the vast chamber. 6 months ago, I discovered something remarkable on a small planet called Verdant Hope. Today we're going to share that discovery with all of you. The holographic display behind her activated, showing the rotating schematic of the precursor terraforming seed in stunning detail. This is a biological system designed to create life from lifelessness. The precursors, whoever they were, understood something fundamental, that scarcity drives conflict while abundance enables cooperation. They built these seeds not as weapons, but as gifts to future civilizations. She walked along the dais, her enthusiasm for the subject evident. Over the past 6 months, this committee has worked tirelessly to understand not just what this technology does, but what it means. We've studied the ethical implications. We've modeled the economic impacts. We've consulted with ecologists, sociologists, and philosophers from every major species. ZYX-Thra took over, her military bearing providing a different perspective. We've also assessed the security considerations. Could this technology be weaponized? Yes. Any tool can be misused. But could it be safeguarded? Also yes. The committee has developed strict protocols for seed distribution, monitoring, and emergency shutdown procedures. One of the Science Foundation directors, a Minox named Dr. Selvara, added his voice. More importantly, we've established that the seeds are self-limiting. They can't create runaway biological weapons or uncontrollable plagues. The precursors built in safeguards, the seeds only activate in response to specific environmental conditions and cease function once a stable ecosystem is established. The chamber erupted in questions. Dr. Vasquez fielded them with practiced ease, explaining technical details while ZYX-Thra addressed security concerns and the ethicists discussed implementation frameworks. During a brief recess, ZYX-Thra found Dr. Vasquez on one of the station's observation decks, staring out at the stars. Having second thoughts? The commander asked. Just thinking about how we got here, Dr. Vasquez replied. 6 months ago you were trying to capture me with an elite strike team. Now we're working together to change the galaxy. Life takes unexpected turns. ZYX-Thra joined her at the viewport. For what it's worth, I'm glad things worked out this way. The alternative, keeping this technology locked away, seems wasteful in retrospect. Your team did well today. How are they adjusting to their new assignments? After the Verdant Hope incident, HFY's Commandos had been reassigned to various positions supporting the Precursor project. Vrelnax was heading up security for field teams conducting archaeological surveys. Krixtal was training rapid response units for potential seed deployment missions. The others had found similar roles that utilized their skills in constructive ways. They're thriving, ZYXThra admitted. Turns out that elite soldiers make excellent problem solvers when you give them meaningful problems to solve. Vrelnax actually thanked me last week. Said this work feels more important than any combat mission we ever ran. That's wonderful to hear. How about you, Doctor? Any regrets about leaving your quiet research station? Dr. Vasquez smiled. I miss my greenhouse sometimes. But this is where I need to be right now. The seeds are important, but the precedent we're setting is even more important. We're proving that different species can work together, that we can share knowledge instead of hoarding it, that we can choose cooperation over competition. Idealistic as ever. Someone has to be. Though I've learned to be a practical idealist, thanks to my time dealing with Kvalesh Commandos. ZYXThra's mandibles curved in amusement. And I've learned to expect the unexpected from unarmed humans. Fair trade. They stood in comfortable silence, watching supply ships and passenger cruisers drift past the station. Unity Station lived up to its name, a neutral ground where all species could meet as equals. Commander, Dr. Vasquez said eventually, I've been meaning to ask. That day in the greenhouse, at any point, did you consider just stunning me and dealing with the consequences later? Honestly? Several times. But something stopped me. Maybe it was your confidence. Maybe it was the realization that brute force wasn't going to work. Or maybe, she paused thoughtfully, maybe it was respect. You'd outsmarted my entire team using nothing but plants and preparation. That deserved acknowledgement, not violence. I appreciate that more than you know. If you'd escalated to lethal force, things would have ended very differently. Would you really have wiped the data? If we'd killed you? Dr. Vasquez's expression became unreadable. What do you think, Commander? I think you're still not going to tell me if that was a bluff. And I think you're wise enough to never want to know for certain. They shared a knowing look, a mutual understanding between former adversaries who'd become unlikely allies. The chime sounded, indicating the recess was ending. They headed back toward the main chamber together. Doctor, ZYXThra said as they walked, my team and I have been discussing something. We'd like to visit Verdant Hope. See the place where everything changed. If you'd be willing to give us a tour of your famous greenhouse. Dr. Vasquez brightened. I'd love that. Though I should warn you, I've added several new specimens since you were last there. Very interesting defensive properties. I wouldn't expect anything less. As they entered the chamber, Dr. Vasquez noticed something that made her smile. In the visitor galleries, mixed among the dignitaries and scientists, sat the rest of ZYXThra's former strike team. Vrelnax, Krixtal, SYX Mora, and the others had come to watch the presentation. When they saw her looking, they raised their hands in a human-style wave. Dr. Vasquez waved back. The session resumed, and for the next several hours, the committee unveiled their framework for gradual seed deployment. They proposed starting with 5 uninhabited systems, carefully monitored and studied. If successful, the program would expand slowly, always prioritizing safety and sustainability. The vote was nearly unanimous. The galaxy had chosen abundance over scarcity. As the session concluded and the attendees filed out, Dr. Vasquez felt a profound sense of accomplishment. Not because she'd discovered the precursor technology, that had been luck and hard work, but because she'd managed to ensure it would be used wisely. And it had all started because a group of elite commandos had underestimated what one stubborn human could accomplish with a greenhouse full of plants. Epilogue. 1 year later. The first precursor seed was deployed on a barren world designated New Haven. Dr. Vasquez and Commander ZYXThra watched from orbit as the seed activated, beginning its transformation of the lifeless planet below. Within hours, the first signs appeared, patches of green spreading across the gray stone, atmospheric processors converting inert gases into breathable air, water beginning to condense and flow. It's beautiful, ZYXThra observed. It's a beginning, Dr. Vasquez replied. The precursors gave us the tools. Now we get to decide what we build with them. In the observation lounge, the former Phantom Strike team had gathered to witness the historic moment. They'd come a long way from that afternoon on Verdant Hope when they tried, and failed, to capture a single unarmed human. Vrelnax raised a cup of earth tea. He'd developed a taste for it. To Dr. Vasquez. The human who taught the Kvalesh Phantom Strike that sometimes the most dangerous opponent is one you never see coming. To unexpected victories, Krixtal added. To stubborn humans and the Commandos who learned to respect them, Zwex Mora finished. They drank, watching a new world being born below. Dr. Kenna Vasquez smiled, thinking about how far they'd all come. She'd set out to catalog plants on a distant world. She'd ended up changing the galaxy. And she'd done it all without firing a single shot. Just as she'd always preferred. The end. Author's note. This story was created as an original HFY Humanity, F*****, narrative exploring themes of ingenuity, preparation, and the power of choosing cooperation over conflict. All characters, locations, and technologies are fictional and created specifically for this story. No copyrighted material was used in its creation. Share artifacts. Download all Alien Commandos story document, MD Alien Commandos HFY story document, MD.